Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss Fantasy Formula 1. The Monaco GP is over. Finally. That certainly was one of the races of all time. Actually, I probably wouldn't even call it a race, per se. What's a better word for it? Event, perhaps. It was one of the events of all time. But the racing or non-racing side of Monaco is one thing, and the F1 fantasy side of Monaco is another. And on the F1 fantasy side, it was an absolute success, and I'll tell you why. Well, you can probably see it on the screen. I ended up using my Limitless chip in Monaco, and yes, I am aware that over the course of the, the week, in the videos that I posted on the channel, the Limitless was not like my main strategy. It was always in the back of my mind, and I did mention it a couple times, but it wasn't my main strategy heading into Monaco. But as always with F1 Fantasy, strategies and plans can change in the final minutes, and that's definitely what happened here. If you missed the deadline stream last weekend, that's what happened. We got to the deadline stream, we looked at some data, and the Limitless looked really, really good, and I ended up using it. So, I mean, cue a clip, actually, of me using it. It's a pretty fun one. I think it's time. Oh! I don't want to do this. Okay. History. I have never had a successful Limitless on my main team. Something has always happened. Literally always. Lando crashing. Disqualifications. Other random BS. And now I'm considering using it in Monaco of all places. What's my gut telling me? My gut is telling me to Limitless. I have never seen Reither, which is the lead analyst, the lead analyst on F1 Fantasy Tools, literally say Limitless is quite certain here. Plus 91 points in race week 8 between best points team versus Limitless. Plus 91 points would be a fantastic Limitless. That's the sort of delta we're looking for. John Mika says, don't do it. Talos says, do it then. Austin says, let's go. Moto G says, it's too risky. Hey man, you're gonna curse us all. I am. Just know that if you Limitless with me, we're all suffering like a 5-car pileup into turn 1. And if that happens, woof, you are the one. Yep. Stress. Let's do it. Alright, it's time. 234 likes. Let's get another 15 likes and we pop it. 15 of you are sitting there and haven't liked the stream yet. At 250 likes, we're popping it. I've decided. It's time. 239, 11 more. We can get there, I know it. 257, woof. It's done. It's popped. No going back now. There's actually no going back. We can still change things, but there's no going back. Oh! Final fix looks better. Shush, Aparov, shush. So yeah, that's the kind of shenanigans that you miss if you don't join me for the deadline stream. Lucky for you, there'll be another deadline stream this weekend on Saturday before the Spanish Grand Prix that you can look at and enjoy, where I might do some more crazy stuff like that. Who knows? It's just a bit of fun. And essentially, the reason I ended up using Limitless is because the delta looked really good. And if you don't know what I mean by delta, I've explained it before, but I'll do it briefly again here because it matters since I ended up using the Limitless. The delta of a Limitless is the difference between me using the Limitless and someone else who's not using the Limitless. Because that's what actually matters with the Limitless. It's not the total amount of points that you get on the Limitless. It is the delta to those who don't use it, because that's what you're competing against, right? You're not playing it in a vacuum. You are trying to compete against people you're competing against the people who don't use the Limitless. And the Limitless Delta looked really good in simulations, and it ended up being very, very easy. One reason for this was because it was a very, very clear top 5, since Mercedes seemed nowhere in terms of pace, Williams wasn't really up there, and Ferrari looked really good. It really was only Ferrari, McLaren, and Verstappen that had any shot of winning the race, and that's what we ended up seeing. I mean, these were the clear top 5 the entire weekend, and they finished top 5. Getting the most amount of points possible, I would imagine, in Monaco. Obviously, if I had 2x Norris instead, since Norris ended up winning, it would have been better. But I'll take the 2x on Leclerc. I know some people put the 2x on Piastri. That would have obviously been worse. But in total, with this team scoring 333 points, that gives me a limitless delta to sort of the best possible team of like 80 points. And the best possible team, I would imagine, would be someone who had Leclerc on their 2x, because they wouldn't be able to afford this with Norris. And I was saying best possible, like, I know Lawson scored a lot of points. Not a lot of people had Lawson. Not a lot of people had Behrman. So I'm just going to do a delta of teams that I can actually see people having. So probably the best possible team would have been something like Leclerc on the 2x, Alex Albon, Isaac Hadjar, Colapinto, and Bortoleto. And if someone had that team, they scored 82 points less than this. If they had Piastri instead of Leclerc, which I know a lot of people had, and I also suggested not switching Piastri to Leclerc on a final fix, which ultimately I think would have ended up being worth it or not worth it. It's on the edge, right? The final fix switch from Piastri to Leclerc, which I mentioned a lot last weekend, or leading up to the weekend, ended up being worth 28 points, which it's not a bad final fix for sure. It's definitely a good final fix. It's not the best final fix, but it's definitely a good final fix. Those who had Piastri instead of Leclerc, but the same team, Piastri, Albon, Hadjar, Colapinto, and Bortoleto, this team would have scored about 109 points, I think, or something like that, more than that team. Obviously, again, with Ferrari in there as a constructor, which ended up being the main thing this week, and it was my my tip of the week as well, to sell off Mercedes. But that's the limitless delta to the best in slot teams, or the best in slot reasonable teams, I suppose. I know some people who had Alonso, some people who had Gasly. I know a lot of people bought Gasly. I bought Gasly on a few of my other teams that didn't end up using limitless, and those obviously scored way worse. There are also people who didn't have Ferrari, who either kept Mercedes or had either Red Bull Racing or Williams in there, and they obviously also scored way less than this team, and the delta ended up being even bigger in those instances. So overall, really good. You might ask, what's a good delta? Usually we say that, like, to the best possible non-limitless team, you want something like an 80 pointer or above for it to be a good limitless. 100 points or more is a great limitless. So this is definitely like a way above average limitless use, so I'm definitely happy about that. It looks better than what the delta ended up being in Miami, even though the delta shifted quite a lot in Miami because a lot of people use final fix. A lot of people either had like 1, 2, or 3 DNFs, so the delta is harder to calculate for Miami, like how worth it the limitless in Miami was, but this seems pretty spot on that this was a good limitless, so I'm definitely happy with that decision in the end. Now, points are all well and good, but what happened in the back? I thought your team that you had was the reason you didn't want to limitless, and that was the main thing. If I'd had something like Williams in the team already from the previous week, them looking super likely to increase 0.6 million, I think I would have popped the limitless much sooner. But me having Isaac Hadjar in there as well as the Mercedes assets was one of the reasons why I was considering not using the limitless at all, but the delta just ended up looking so good that I said, screw the budget, I'm going to use it. Now, Hadjar ended up having a fantastic race, meaning that I actually increased in budget from him. Mercedes obviously had a tragic race, decreasing 0.1 million, but I will say that this is a successful budget gain, even though it's not as high as it could have been if I'd had some other assets in there. But in the end, I only lost budget on the Mercedes assets, and Albon and Hadjar, Piastri, McLaren ended up increasing, and obviously Colapinto and Bortoleto couldn't decrease in price, so they stayed at their 4.5 million. That puts my total team value at 112.3 million, which, is beginning to get up there. I think this team is improving. And speaking of this team improving, that successful limitless brought me from 85k overall to 12k overall, or 11.292 actually, as you can see above me. So from nowhere to being back in the season, closing in on the top 10k. Top 10k is definitely possible now with this team, which didn't really look like at the start of the season, but a couple of good results in a row, and I mean, this is definitely as big of a blue arrow as you could hope for. Obviously, Limitless scoring a lot of points, so when people who haven't used Limitless yet will use it in the future, that will obviously change things, but I do imagine that the majority of people in the top have now used their Limitless over these last couple of weeks, so there's definitely a minority that still have it remaining going into Spa and Hungary. So we'll have to see how those who end up using the Limitless there perform, and obviously be prepared for red arrows when we get to there. But I've had a couple of blue arrows now in a row, so let's try and push on and see if we can breach the top 10k in Spain. So I go into Barcelona, into the Spanish Grand Prix with 2 free transfers because I used my Limitless last week, and we have a couple of things to look at, a couple of things to discuss. The main problem piece here, I think, is Mercedes. This is now their second bad result in a row, meaning they look really, really bad, both for budget gains and also maybe for points. We'll have to see, though. Maybe they could look good for points in Barcelona, but the fact that they look so bad for budget means that Mercedes, for me, is one of the must-sells this week. I would actually rather have Williams in there, because points-wise, I mean, they look pretty similar currently, but at least Williams is increasing in price. The main thing, though, is maybe I should get Ferrari in there if Ferrari look to be back with their upgraded board in Monaco. Maybe that's a fluke in Monaco. That's also actually one of the reasons why I ended up using my Limitless, is because Ferrari looked so good in Monaco, but they've not been good the rest of the season, so I didn't want to commit to the transfer to Ferrari if Ferrari ended up looking bad in Barcelona, and I would have to sell them again. So at least this gives the opportunity to bring in Ferrari if I want to, but ignore them also if I want to. Red Bull Racing is also an option. I do think Barcelona is a track that probably suits the Red Bull car more than Monaco. And if the Ferraris are back to being insignificant and the Mercedes is still struggling, maybe Max Verstappen is the one to be up there with the McLarens on the podiums. So getting Red Bull Racing in there could definitely be a good option if Max looks to be one to contend for the win in Spain. And that would be one transfer I can literally just afford that with the drop to Mercedes' price. But looking over on F1 Fantasy Tools and the budget builder section, again, probably my favorite page on their website. You should definitely go check it out if you haven't already. Code up there if you want to use the premium features. And we can see which assets now look the best. Hadjar is back up there to being among the best, so I'm super happy I ended up using my Limitless so I can keep Hadjar. Apart from that, it doesn't look great. I mean, Colapinto is somehow one of the better assets, even despite needing 12 points, and this is exactly what I was expecting with Monaco and Imola being after each other. If you remember, before this triple header, I was saying a lot, like, these two races are going to be low scoring for those cheap assets, which means that there are going to be a lot of price decreases in the 2 races that follows, right? Until we have rotated Imola and Monaco out of here. So currently, I mean, Hadjar, Lawson, definitely an option, only at 4.8 million, looks like a good option. And then Behrman with his 8-pointer is sort of creeping back up there as a potential option, but granted, a 9-pointer is not that easy to reach. He could be one to fall in price as well. I do think we should look at the 0.2 million price bracket. The reason for that is that 6.6 million is going to be difficult for these assets to reach. Even Alex Albon, who, you know, with an 18-pointer in Imola and is scoring points at least in Monaco with 4 points, 15 points is difficult for him to reach. I mean, that 18-pointer was a heroic race for him. So maybe Albon is one to sell, actually, if I'm not thinking about points, but thinking about budget. And in fact, Sainz actually looks better than him for points increases. So maybe a move from Albon to Sainz could be something to consider. As, you know, they've been equal-ish in terms of pace and performance over the last few, even though Albon has, been better than Sainz over the course of the season. It feels like Sainz is slowly beginning to catch up to Albon. And although he hasn't reached his level just yet, he is 5 million cheaper than what Albon is, so that would allow a lot of other upgrades elsewhere. We also have Fernando Alonso down at 4.5 million. If I don't end up doing anything else, and say I just do that Mercedes to Red Bull Racing transfer that I talked about, getting Alonso in for Portoletta could be a move I consider. Now, obviously, Alonso is not going to increase in price, but in his home race, if he manages to score points after the super unlucky season he's had so far, perhaps he could get a cheeky driver of the day if he gets a P5. Who knows, right? So I do think Alonso is a really good option to switch from Bortoleto, because Bortoleto, I mean, Bortoletta's doing what we are expecting him to do. -2 points, then 3 points. He's going to stay 4.5 million for the foreseeable future, I would imagine. So getting Alonso in there seems completely fine, since Alonso is now one of those assets that cannot decrease in price. And I do think that greatly increases the value of him as an asset, because surely his bad luck has to end at some point. Right, so Alonso is also someone I'm definitely looking at. Tsunoda's poor performance makes him an avoid for me. Gasly's DNF makes him an avoid for me, though he's going to keep dropping in price. So I do think we'll have to look quite hard at Gasly after these 2 races. So after Barcelona and Canada, once we get into Silverstone, I do think Gasly could be one of the main assets to consider once we get there. You know, obviously looking likely for two big points drops in a row. Antonelli is another interesting one. Antonelli has dropped down to tier B, but considering his last 2 performances, he's also one to avoid until Silverstone. And this is sort of what I talked about previously in previous weekends, that once we get to Silverstone, maybe if we've played the budget game well enough, we can start affording teams with 2 premium constructors and 2 premium drivers. The second premium driver being Antonelli, who's currently classed as a tier B. With this, Antonelli is probably dropping 0.6 million for the next 2 races. So that means he could be a really, really, really good option once we get to Silverstone. So for now, only really considering Lawson and probably Alonso and maybe Sainz. The other assets for me are avoids in terms of buying. If you have Hadjar, if you don't have Hadjar, I do think Hadjar is like the main one to actually focus on getting in. Not only are his performances really, really good recently, but you know, he's also due a 0.6 price rise if he could just score 2 points, which I definitely think he will be able to muster up in Barcelona. So where does that leave me here? Again, with Red Bull Racing in here, that leaves me at 0.000 in the cost cap, and one additional transfer to potentially make would be to do Bortoleto out for Fernando Alonso and then just call it a day. The other options would be maybe to get a Williams in here. The problem with Williams is that leaves so much money in the bank to upgrade something that I don't even really know what to do with it. Because again, there's none of those super expensive assets that are interesting, right? Albon looks likely to drop. Tsunoda looks bad. Antonelli looks bad, right? If Antonelli was an option, perhaps this would be more enticing for me. But because there's no like expensive driver that I want to get currently, I feel like I don't need to get Williams. The one thing I could do maybe is to like upgrade Piastri to a Norris or a Verstappen, but until I've seen practice, that's not something I'm interested in. And it's not like Piastri's not performing. He's the one driver to like be top 4 in every qualifying so far this season, and even if he doesn't win every race, he's at least ticking along with the points. So I see no reason to like rush Piastri out of here. So for me currently, Williams, while Williams is definitely an option to buy in, I don't see the upside in getting Williams because there's no one else I want to buy for that money. So I might as well stick with Ferrari or Red Bull Racing in there as my second constructor. I'd much rather have Ferrari or Red Bull in there. But the main thing is I'm probably selling Mercedes. If you didn't see the budget builder, let's just quickly go back. Mercedes, 52 points. I mean, they definitely could reach that, but 74 points and never hitting. And as long as they're not increasing 0.3 million, they're falling behind the other premium assets, which means that it's going to be more difficult to afford those other premium assets in the future. So definitely Mercedes is the main thing I need to get rid of. And I'm almost guaranteed to do that, by the way. So again, if it's Red Bull Racing in here, I don't have much other options. If I want to get Ferrari, I would have to downgrade something. In that case, I can't afford to do I can't afford to make luxury transfers of Bortoleto for Alonso. I would have to downgrade someone, and since I don't want to downgrade Hadjar, that would be Albon. I'm completely fine with downgrading Albon. It would probably be for Lawson, I'm not gonna lie. Which again leaves a lot of money in the bank, but that's good for future transfers, right? So if I want to get Ferrari in there, it's probably Albon out for Lawson and get Ferrari in there. The other option in this slot is of course Carlos Sainz, which I already discussed, which looks in my opinion, better than Albon for this race. Again, it's his home race. Could be really good for Driver of the Day points. We've seen Driver of the Day go to a lot of home race merchants so far, and if Sainz can maybe beat Albon for the first or second time this season, I can't exactly remember. But you know, if Sainz gets a P5 result, he's definitely on the cards for a home race Driver of the Day. So if I'm downgrading Albon to Sainz to get Ferrari in there, that's probably what I'm doing. Maybe it's Lawson in there if Williams don't look competitive. And again, if it's Red Bull Racing in here, if Ferrari don't look good, it's probably keeping Albon and doing Bortoleto to Alonso. But these are the drivers that are unsure in my team. These assets are the assets I'm looking to move and/or change. Piastri, Hadjar, Colapinto, and McLaren likely not going anywhere. Maybe a Piastri switches on the cards if Verstappen looks really dominant, but I doubt it. The problem with Piastri, right, is I would have to go for like a Williams in here to get the budget then, or take a -10 to do like, obviously keep Bortoleto in here then, but sell all three of these assets and get, say Max Verstappen is the one I want. Do something like this here. I mean, this looks like a really, really good team, and if you can afford this team, it looks like a really, really good differential for this week, for sure. Would I do a -10 for it unless like Verstappen is dominating in practice? Probably not, but if Verstappen looks dominant in practice and in the simulations, maybe this is something I can consider, right? But that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the deadline stream on Saturday, 2 hours before the deadline. Do not miss it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'm so close to 3K subscribers, so try and help me to get there. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you so much for watching this video. Goodbye.